There's this one sentence that is absolutely crucial to anyone understanding President Trump in the Middle East, President Trump in Europe, President Trump in Asia, and just the legacy. The only question of the age is whether or not we in the West have the will to protect Judeo-Christian civilization from those who wish to destroy it. Do we have the backbone to save our civilization from the barbarians who are trying to destroy it? Whether it's 9/11, October the 7th, that's the only question.
In 40 days, Donald Trump is going to be inaugurated into office. And as we look forward to that time, obviously we're very excited, but also talking about the future of Israel-American relations in the upcoming administration is becoming an issue of keen interest in Israel, ever keener every day. And I was very happy that my old friend, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, who's the incoming Senior Director for Counter-Terrorism at Donald Trump's National Security Council, agreed to be on my show. I met Dr. Gorka, I think the first time in 2017 when he was working as a Deputy Strategic Advisor for President Trump in the first round of office. And we've kept in touch ever since. And it's been my pleasure to keep in touch with him. He's such a fantastic strategic thinker and friend of Israel. So first of all, Sebastian Gorka, welcome to the Carolyn Glick Show. Thanks for coming.
Thank you kindly, and thank you for supporting my national radio show over the last 6 years. And I appreciate your truth-telling. So you're one of the few warriors on these issues. So we appreciate your support.
Are you kidding? It's always been a great pleasure for me. Even on hard days, I remember we spoke right after the son of a close friend of mine had been killed in battle, and talking to you was actually picking me up. So thank you for being such a fine interviewer and great friend. At any rate, I want to start with what's happening now. As we speak, it's about 3:30 in the afternoon in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu is ending his first day of testimony in his criminal case. It's the opening day of his defense trial after 4 years of the prosecution failing to make its case against the prime minister. All that is interesting and important for domestic affairs, but what's really notable from an international perspective is the incredible similarity between the way that our administrative state has been prosecuting or persecuting Netanyahu and the way that President Trump was really hounded by what you refer to as the deep state in the United States. I see similar situations with Bolsonaro, the former president of Brazil, and in other countries as well, where you see these empowered administrators just waging sort of lawfare against elected leaders. Do you care to comment on how it is that these things happen in such a similar way in so many different countries at the same time?
Yeah, it is truly an international phenomena. And if you look at the parallels with what they did to my former boss and as of January 20th, my future boss, there is what my friend Rich Minitzer, the superb investigative journalist, calls an unaccountable class. And the unaccountable class really doesn't care what the electorate does on election day. You see this with regards to the elites, in the so-called elites, in government, in academia, in media. I saw this in the White House during the first Trump administration. When we went in, I refused to use the phrase deep state. I thought it was a little bit too extreme, the tinfoil hat brigade. And then I witnessed it and I saw it with my own eyes. I wasn't part of the National Security Council back then, but because of my remit as strategist to the president, I'd attend all the classified national security meetings on issues with pertinence to my portfolio. So, ISIS, China, what have you. And I'd sit there in the Situation Room in these secure, compartmented, rooms with all the chief bureaucrats of the U.S. government. Everybody from the CIA to the DIA to the military outstations in Kabul and you name it. And I'd sit there for about an hour listening to these bureaucrats talk, and none of them would mention the name of the new president or what he had said just literally hours ago about China or ISIS or the Middle East or the Abraham Accords. So after a couple of weeks, I decided I might be the new guy and I might have a funny accent, but an hour in, I'd say, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, did you hear what the president said about Jerusalem yesterday? Did you hear what he said about ISIS at that summit? And it was clear to me that these are people in very senior positions who've been there for 20, 30 years, and they don't care what the people have done to choose a new commander-in-chief, and they think they get to run the country. So whether it's the duly elected prime minister of Israel, whether it's President Trump, who was facing 730 years in prison because they couldn't have him win the election a second time, I think this is a phenomenon we see everywhere. And also, look, the response is likewise a global phenomena. We don't have MAGA and America First. I don't think we have Maloney. We don't have Modi unless what? Nigel Farage manages to bring together 17.3 million Brits to say, okay, we've had it with this socialist construct of the European Union and we want national sovereignty and we're going to leave. So Brexit in the UK is also another part of this, hey, the people want their country back. And I hate this, the word populism, because populism has been twisted into this pejorative, but hang on a second, popular? So you mean the majority of the people want the government to represent their views? That's how it should be in a representative political structure. But the embedded elites who hate people like President Trump or like Benjamin Netanyahu, they cannot stand the people choosing the direction of their country.
So do you think there's something that we can do together to cooperate, to try to kind of pull our democracies back and seize control again of the reins of power in all of these different countries? Obviously, the one of most pressing concern for me here in Israel is Israel. But I mean, I see the way that President Trump is really appointing people like you and these other warriors for the American people and the consent of the government, of the governed, and not the government, the governed. And it's something that, it's critical for national security. I mean, look, we're going to move in a second to the mess that the Biden administration, which very much is working hand in glove with the administrative state in the United States, is going to be leaving. I mean, it's a dumpster fire, not only in the Middle East, which is what we're going to talk about, but really all over the world.
Look, there's a kind of ontological challenge with that, because if you're a patriot who loves your country, you're likely to be a conservative. And as such, the idea that we're going to create an international, global network of people who are going to take their countries back is a kind of oxymoronic on a certain...
It's an oxymoron.
Right, on a certain level. However, I think there are ways, practices. The way, CPAC was an American phenomenon. Matt Schlapp's, American Conservative Union annual jamboree for conservatives, which is now the biggest conservative convocation the world has ever seen, every February. The CPAC used to be an American thing, and it led to the, rebirth of conservatism. Well, now CPAC is being copied everywhere. I mean, I've got invitations to go to Mexico, Australia, Japan, you name it. And, American conservatives go there to these other countries and they talk about best practices. How do you communicate effectively? What's the role of social media? So I don't think we need an umbrella, but we need to trade best practices, lessons learned with those who say, I'm in Taiwan, I'm in Hungary, I want to have the views of the people represented in government. How did you do it in America? How did you do it with Brexit in the UK? I think that's the best thing to do, is just to learn and also understand one thing. Here's the philosophical aspect. If you want to talk about the left or the toxic, I'm this crazy person. I would like to have two parties in America that love America. There's only one party that loves America right now, and it's the Republican Party. I have said on my radio show for years, you can delete the adjective Republican or Democrat. The taxonomy is irrelevant today. Even conservative or liberal is outmoded. The one liminal division is, do you love America or do you hate it? Do you believe we should have borders or do you not believe we have borders? Do you believe America is endemically racist or do you think it is the nation that sacrificed 600,000 of its citizens to stop slavery? I mean, this is the dividing line. So I think, when it comes to learning what to do, is you leverage that patriotism wherever you are and you learn from others what they have done, because the real challenge is for the organized, the modern secular left, politics is a way of life. They wake up in the morning and they live it, they eat it, they drink it because they have no God, they have no faith. Who was it? Blaise Pascal said, you can deny the existence of God, but all you do is you create a God-shaped hole in the soul of the human being, which has to be filled with something, with environmentalism, feminism, whatever. For the left, the secular vacuum is filled with politics as a function of life. If you're a conservative, if you're running a business, if you're living your life, politics is something you do every couple of years when you go and vote. And as such, we've been at a disadvantage until recently. Look at what happened in the last election here in America. We did things that the left have been doing for decades that we kind of held our nose up at. Voting early? Oh, no. I want to go to the polling station on election day. I want to hand my ballot into the box. And we said, no, I live in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which has a putative conservative governor. He couldn't even change the fact that we have this absolute scandal of 45 days of voting in Virginia. It's not even a week of election. It's a month and a half of election. Okay, well, if we've got 45 days of voting, guess what? The Democrats are going to be collecting votes for 45 days. And you can't mathematically win an election against a party that's collecting votes for a month and a half if you tell everybody, hey, we're only going to vote on election day. You can't get that many people to vote. So
you're saying basically that the way to do it is to just, if you can't beat them, join them, and then beat them at their own game.
Absolutely,
that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. If the rules of the game are X, you can't say sorry, I don't do that, because then you will be condemned to losing. With that one proviso, is that we stay loyal to our values. I've had a couple of arguments over the years that, well, they stole the election, so we need to steal it. And I say, well, no, we don't, because I'm not going to live in that America, because at that point, America ceases to exist. We do not believe.
Can I just talk to you again about one of the aspects of that you were saying about the God hole, the God-shaped hole in the soul? There's a growing assessment among Israelis, and also I think among a growing number, unprecedented really, a number of American Jews who voted for Republican for the first time. Some 40% of American Jews, which sounds like a minority, but when you compare it to previous election cycles, it's enormous, who voted for Trump, and in some places much higher than that. That they see that this hole is being filled by anti-Semitism, and you see people just romping all over the United States, attacking Jews if they're not openly and enthusiastically calling for the destruction of Israel, along with other Hamas supporters. And the situation has gotten so harsh, and the support for the Palestinians has become so central to the democratic identity that for Israelis, it's sort of daunting. If we do what we realize after October 7th must be done, which is bury the idea of a Palestinian state in the West, is that just going to cause all hell to break loose in the United States?
I don't know that it'll do that. Look, let's be clear. It is shocking and horrific that on the quad at Harvard, you can have students chant from the river to the sea, which is, a genocidal chant. And then the president of Harvard says, well, it depends on the context. No, it means you want to have all Jews killed, period, end of story. That's horrific. However, here's the good news. The indoctrination is very, very skin deep. I mean, I can't tell you how. Just go online, go on Instagram right now and see conservative, content providers who go out to these stupid little, protesters with their keffiyehs, these rich white kids wearing their keffiyehs and say, who are chanting from the river to the sea, and they ask them, which river, which sea, and they say, Atlantic. I mean, they're just stupid. I mean, these are little girls and boys who've just been utterly, completely brainwashed. And it's the latest cool thing, right? To say, I'm pro-Palestinian. Ask them, hey, where does the word Palestinian come from? Do you know that it was a Roman slur for the Jews based on the word Philistine? And they're like, right? I mean, it's shocking. It's wrong. It's bad. It's protected by the First Amendment, but it's not a deep, deep indoctrination. It can be countered. And if you look at the recent election, it's a little bit disturbing when it comes to females, but the trend line for young men is hard to conservatism. The trend line is they've had it with being told they're toxic and all this garbage, and they're coming back to reality. Young women, not so much. They're staying left and going further left. But I'm not worried about the idiots on the campuses. I'm far more concerned, and this will be a large part of my job in the administration. We had an open border for the last 4 years with at least 16 million illegals let into the country. If you're
How many, 60 or 16?
16. So the official figure is 8 million. That's according to the Biden administration. But those are the people who actually interacted with law enforcement and CBP and who were let in. There's the other category of gotaways, people who came across the border and nobody intercepted them. Nobody gave them their cell phone and their $5,000. So if you add the 8 million to at least another 8 million of gotaways, that's at least 16 million in 4 years. If just 1% of them are malefactors, are Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Nusra, Hezbollah, Hamas, whatever, we are talking about divisional size assets of terrorists inside the United States. That is my primary concern, less the rich idiots who have been brainwashed at Harvard.
Well, one of the things that President Trump said he was going to do was deport the students on campuses that are foreign students that are on student visas in the United States that are siding with terrorists or promoting terrorism on their college campuses. Will that solve part of the problem, or is it too limited a slice of the overall phenomenon?
That's a tiny, tiny part of it. I mean, the real target are the operators, the people who have come here to do evil. And this is unclassified.
Do you have any assessment of how many there are?
Well, we know that there are scores and scores who were let into the country who were on the terrorism watch list. There are unclassified court cases you can talk about right now. 8 members of ISIS were arrested who'd been let in, and a quote-unquote asylum seeker was let in, who was paroled into the country under the Harris border regime, who plotted a terrorist attack for election day. We know Iran, again, unclassified. Iran had a Pakistani agent in the U.S. who was plotting an assassination attempt against President Trump. So, the stories are legion, but with Tom Homan coming in as the border czar for President Trump, the former director of ICE in the first Trump administration, he's been very explicit. You will see the biggest deportation operation in American history start at 12:01 on January the 20th when President Trump is sworn in. And we have to do it. If you don't have national sovereignty, you have nothing. I mean, Israel knows that better than anyone.
We sure do. And then just not to belabor the point, but the question of Palestinian statehood has sort of been the central axis around which American-U.S. relations have pivoted over the past 4 years, and also during the 8 years of the Obama administration. They were less so in the Trump administration, but Israelis are pretty determined to walk away from the so-called two-state solution that brought us October 7th, among many other things. Do you think that that's something that's also going to dominate our conversations with the Trump administration?
Look, I'll just refer you to David Friedman, my good friend, who was President Trump's ambassador to Jerusalem when we moved the embassy and recognized Jerusalem as the capital of the eternal state of Israel. In his latest book, One State Solution, David is very clear. And as a counter-terrorism professional who's been studying this stuff for 25 years, I can only concur. if you have, this isn't me talking, this is the polling data since October the 7th. If you just look at the Gazan population, more than 70% of that population agrees with the massacre of the innocents that occurred on October 7th. They said, yes, killing young girls at rock concerts and murdering babies and gunning down unarmed men is good because they're Jewish. If 70+% of a population agrees with that, then you cannot have them in charge of their sovereignty, because once they have their sovereignty, what will they do? They will come to do the final solution and finish it this time. You know, the dream of Adolf Hitler, the Third Reich, and every anti-Semite since the beginning of time. So, you know, unless the desires of the population change, for the meantime, Israel has to be in charge of its security. And that means maintaining the security of those territories until you get to a point where, you know, it's 1% of the population wants every Jew killed. Once anti-Semitism is a small fraction of the problem, then you can talk about autonomy or two-state solution. But until then, Israel must be allowed to live. And the way that it is allowed to live is it maintains security control of those areas where the majority of the population wants to slaughter Jews. It's very simple. There's no politics involved. If a mass of the population wants to exterminate you and you don't want to die, then you can't allow that mass view to dominate your safety.
It's the same thing, of course, in Judea and Samaria, where actually you had even higher percentages of the population that was supportive of October 7th than you had in Gaza, presumably because they didn't pay as harsh a price in Israeli war in the aftermath of that day of genocide. So I would assume that you view that area in the same manner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, any war, whether it's counterterrorism against non-state actors or against state actors, is about two things. It's about will and capacity to fight. What Israel has been preeminent at is removing the threat group's capacity to fight, and you know the pager operation is absolutely the zenith of that. You know the capacity to harm you is degraded by you neutralizing their key assets or what have you. The second part of the equation, which often Israel has missed, is the will to fight, right? You look at Vietnam. Vietnam, the enemy weren't exactly super sophisticated, but they were prepared to fight until the last guy with a pointy stick. What the safety comes in the long term when the will to fight is so attrited to a level that they realize kinetically engaging with you is not worth it. That may take a very long time in Gaza, Samaria, Judea. In the meantime, Israel has to survive.
I appreciate that. You know, going back to the will versus the capacity, what we're seeing in Syria, obviously what we touched on Lebanon, but let's just go to a second for Syria, where everybody is just, looking with rapt attention after the amazing pace of the overthrow of, or the downfall, more to the point, of Bashar al-Assad's regime. You see, I would say, the disintegration of Syria, the appearance of many different groups that are seizing control of areas. And then you're seeing Israel just trying to do everything we can to minimize the risks to our security and to regional stability as a result of what just happened in Syria. I'm just curious, when you're looking at things, is there something that really stands out in your mind with what's going on in Syria that's really going to be salient for the next 4 years when you're looking at the threat environment and you're looking at the way that the United States has to organize itself given the rise of al-Qaeda in Syria?
Well, look, as you did in the intro, the biggest problem is we have 40 days until the good guys take control of the greatest military and intelligence enterprise the world had ever seen. I don't want to tempt fate. I'm a little bit superstitious. This is an immense opportunity. Yes, it's bad that jihadis who, get a haircut and now present themselves as, liberators have taken down the regime, a regime which, as we know, for 50 years was one of the most bloodthirsty regimes in the region. So, we shouldn't celebrate the fact that, jihadi elements are now in control in Damascus. However, it's no longer a client state of Iran or Russia. And as such, there's a huge opportunity, especially after October 7th and the amazing operations by the IDF and Israeli intelligence, to redraw the geopolitical reality in the region, which is good for the Arab states that want to be on America's side, also good for the Kurds in the north, and also good for Israel. So I cannot predict what this absolutely feckless administration of Biden and Harris will do in the next 40 days, but we should welcome the collapse of the Assad regime, despite the fact that the jihadis right now seem to be in a position of power in Damascus. That is a rather tenuous position that they are in, especially after January the 20th.
Because the other thing is, there have been people here who have been wondering about a seeming disparity, and I was wondering whether you could shed light on it. That on the one hand, Israel has repeatedly on a daily basis, made clear the determination, its determination to destroy Iran's nuclear installations sooner rather than later. And on the other hand, seemingly on the other hand, President Trump talks about his desire to reach a deal with the Iranians. And I'm just wondering, in your view, are these two goals mutually exclusive? Do they contradict one another?
Yeah, I think it's a misrepresentation of President Trump's stance. So for me, the proudest moment in my career in the White House or in my professional career in national security was the day that President Trump had arrayed the cabinet in the Oval Office, and he called in me and Steve Bannon, and he called us his heavies. And he's, the whole cabinet is arrayed there. And he said, all right, my heavies, tell these guys why the Iran deal we inherited from Obama is bad and has to be killed, because every 6 months he had to decide whether to re-up it or to kill it. And this was the cusp of the 6-month renewal or suspension. And President Trump knew exactly why we had to get rid of it, but we did the 60-second elevator pitch that it's bad for the region, it's bad for Israel, it's bad for America, and it actually doesn't stop the mullahs from acquiring nuclear capability. I mean, the dirty little secret that it doesn't actually stop them. So he did the pitch, and then proudest moment is, a few days later, he kills, the Obama-Iran deal. President Trump, look, I'm not going to give anything away.
That is a proud moment. I got to say, you deserve to just hold that very close to your heart till the end of your days.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm not going to give anything away. The president will be the commander-in-chief again. Mike Waltz will be my immediate boss as an amazing national security advisor. But if you want to know what President Trump's going to do on anything, and I'm not trying to sell books. Everybody, whether you're a head of state, whether you're the national security advisor for Israel, doesn't matter who you are. If you want to understand the next 4 years geopolitically and domestically in America, just go and bloody well read The Art of the Deal. The Art of the Deal is your guidebook to the 47th president of the United States. He tells you how he operates, okay? And look at what he did for the first 4 years. I do a lot of media with, foreign correspondents. And of course, before the election, they all came to me and blah, blah, blah. And it's so conventional wisdom and, talking points as if issued by the DNC, the Democrat Party. And I remember one of them, I did the head of the news agency for one of the Scandinavian nations within my studio. And he says to me, this is a grown man, he says, and what happens if your former boss wins? Is he going to dissolve NATO? Is he going to leave the alliance? And I just looked at him and I said, were you in a coma for the 4 years we were in the White House? Are you a child? What happened to NATO when President Trump was the president? We came in and 20% of NATO paid their dues. President Trump said, you better pay your dues or something bad will happen. And by the end of the Trump administration, we had more than doubled the number. Billions of dollars had flowed into NATO because people were saying, we better get serious and we don't want to look like lightweights. We made NATO, President Trump made NATO stronger than he had ever been since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And it was all in his book, The Art of the Deal. To understand President Trump, all you need to know is one thing. He loves America. And if you want to stand with America, he'll stand with you. One more thing I'll say. If you want to understand President Trump, the most important speech he ever gave, in my opinion, apart from announcing he's going to run again, read, number one, the Riyadh speech. So the Riyadh speech, where he's got the Arab and Muslim heads of states of 52 nations, and he calls them out and he says, you guys have to deal with the jihadis in your countries first. I mean, I can't tell you how many Arab government representatives after that said, thank you. Thank you that your boss didn't come here and say everything's great and we have blah, blah, blah common interests. He called us out so that we could get serious with the domestic threat in our mosques on the high street. That was the second most important. First most important one, and please, your viewers need to go back, it's on YouTube, and watch his Warsaw speech. He demanded he give it at the site. The Polish government wanted him to be in some secure, ugly building downtown. And he said, no, I want to be next to the massive bronze statue of the uprising, the Warsaw uprising, these freedom fighters coming literally out of the sewers to kill Nazis. I want to be standing next to that. He gave this speech, and I didn't write it. I helped frame it, okay? President Trump is an amazing speechwriter, but Steve and I helped frame it months before he went. And there's this one sentence that is absolutely crucial to anyone understanding President Trump in the Middle East, President Trump in Europe, President Trump in Asia, and just the legacy. Near the end of the speech, he says, the only question of the age is whether or not we in the West have the will to protect Judeo-Christian civilization from those who wish to destroy it. I mean, is there a more important question? There isn't. And President Trump was explicit. Do we have the backbone to save our civilization from the barbarians who are trying to destroy it? Whether it's 9/11, October the 7th, that's the only question.
Well, I think that you pinned the tail on the donkey right there. And I'll tell you something else. I just from where I'm sitting in Israel, I have to say that not only did the entire country heave a collective sigh of relief on November 5th, but we're counting the days. And it's a real question. Do you think that he's going to really be able to turn things around very quickly? That's what he keeps saying. I mean, there's such a dumpster fire in this region. And really in the world, it's not going to be easy.
Well, I would just point you to one thing, and it's kind of fun as well. Watch the footage from Paris this weekend. I mean, just look at how every head of, even Jill Biden looks at the president like she's in love, and the president uses it to, just big up his fragrance, products, his aftershave. It's like, look at everyone from Meloni to Macron. Look at the power, the alpha move with the handshake with Macron. Look at the Prince of Wales, how he received President Trump at the British Embassy. I mean, everybody on the planet, even if they're left wing, is treating President Trump like the commander-in-chief 42 days before he actually assumes office again. So, yeah, I think, look, there are people, again, to put it in the context of what we witnessed in Butler, Pennsylvania. Even if you're a jihadi, especially if you're a jihadi, even if you're, little Kim in North Korea, what did we see in Butler? I mean, I went back for the president's second speech when he returns and Elon Musk, is jumping around the stage. What did Elon say? I love Elon. It's like he's a kid who's just discovered politics. He said, do you want a president who falls asleep at summit meetings? Or do you want a guy who gets shot in the head and then gets up and says, fight, 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 with blood streaming down his face? I mean, this is a message to everyone, good guys and bad guys. Look, I played at soldiers, okay? Not really, big deal. I was in the military intelligence reserves when I was in college. Even though I wore a uniform once, even though I was in the British Army, I know I would not have reacted the way President Trump reacted. I mean, if I got shot in the head by a bullet traveling at 3,000 feet per second, I would have I would have seen the blood. I would have either frozen like everybody else, or I would have shouted, "Oh my gosh, I've been shot." What did President Trump do? Immediately, he knew what was happening. He took cover. Then the Secret Service, who are late to the game, they keep him in the kill box for like 40 seconds, which is just unbelievable. And then what happens? He takes control of his PSD. That iconic photograph of him, blood streaming down, head held high, fist in the air, should physically have been impossible. Watch the footage of the Reagan shooting. As soon as the shots are fired, Reagan is picked up like a bag of potatoes and literally launched into the back of the beast, into the armored vehicle, and then taken to the hospital. Because as soon as there's an attack, the principal, I mean, the Israelis have the best PSD teams. The principal, even if he's the president, loses physical control of his body, and his body is now in the control of the agents protecting him. President Trump says, get out of the way.
Responded the same way, but who responded the exact same way as President Trump did to getting shot?
Who?
The people of Israel. And,
yeah, right.
I mean,
when these
that's
stories
exactly
of young officers, young female IDF officers who are traverse the country because they hear their unit is under attack and they just run to the gunfire. Absolutely. But the difference is those are average citizens doing their part to save their nation and their fellow citizens. What we're talking about is the incoming president. Because, I still, in the first Trump administration, I was always asked, so what's the president's national security stance? What's his foreign policy? And I just spent 2.5 years teaching the Marines in Quantico, and I stole a phrase from the Marines. I said, it's not really very complicated. With President Trump at the Resolute desk, no better friend, no worse enemy. If you want to
Israel can expect that he is our kindred spirit and that we're going to...
If you share our values, and if you want to be our friend, we will stand shoulder to shoulder with you. We'll be right there with Bibi. We'll be right there with whoever wants to be our friend. But if you're our enemy, woe betide you. Whether you're the mullahs in Iran, whether you're, anybody else, jihadi, just woe betide you. Woe betide you.
Well, in the Bible, the commentaries say that 40 is just a synonym for many. But let these 40 days pass as swiftly as any that we've ever experienced in our life. We look forward to seeing President Trump back ensconced in the Oval Office behind that Resolute desk and being our friend.
Well, our prayers are with you. We are, shared warriors in a civilization whose enemies are common to both of us. So, it seems like a long time, but have faith, my friends, and then everything changes at 12:01 on January the 20th.
God willing. All right. Well, thanks so much, Sebastian. I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're in the transition team and you are very busy. So I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to me and my viewers today. Have a wonderful week.
God bless. Thank you, Caroline.